All right, welcome back to ABA exam review in our 6th BCBA practice exam. Today we're going to go through the next set of questions together and break them down. If you're new to the channel, welcome. If you're returning, welcome back. Please like and subscribe. Check out behavioranalyststudy.com for all of our study materials, including our combo pack and other practice exams. As always, when you pass, let us know so we can include you in the Sunday shout out. Work hard, study hard. Let's get going. 64. Janice is reading a sleep training book to prepare for the birth of her first child. The book tells Janice that she should wait at least 5 minutes until she comforts her baby if they are crying and should only comfort the baby for 3 minutes at a time maximum. Comforting the baby most likely represents what in this scenario? Now, a couple things to consider. First, when you've got a very behavioral question like this one, where we're referring to a lot of different people and behaviors, always first identify what is the question specifically asking about. And in this case, they're specifically asking about comforting the baby. Number two is we don't necessarily know how comforting the baby is affecting future behavior, but we still got to pick our best answer based on the information. So we're going with the best answer based on the information given. So as always, we do all our work up front in the question before jumping to the answer choice, because you want to get to the point where you start predicting the right answer before you even look at the answer choices. So in this case, how is Janice comforting the baby, or what role is that playing? Well, Janice's book says she needs to wait at least 5 minutes until she comforts her baby if they are crying. And why is that? Well, because likely comforting the baby is going to lead to more crying. It's very likely comforting the baby for crying will positively reinforce the baby. But what other effect might comforting the baby have? Well, if Janice is comforting the baby, she is herself escaping from the crying. So comforting the baby likely has two potential consequences and outcomes. So we have to consider both of those. So comforting the baby most likely represents what? A, positive punishment for the baby. Well, it's likely not going to punish the baby, right? The book is saying avoid comfort because if you comfort the baby, it's likely to keep crying, right? It's very likely it's going to be positive reinforcement, which is what answer B is indicating. Comforting the baby is likely positively reinforcing for the baby. But comforting the baby is also likely negatively reinforcing for Janice. And why? Because by comforting the baby, Janice escapes the crying. So comforting the baby likely has two outcomes. One, it's going to positively reinforce the baby for crying. Two, Janice is going to get positively reinforced for escaping the crying. So likely the best answer here is both B and C. 65. You are training a group of parents on proper implementation of an extinction procedure. Some of the families report that things are going well, while others report that they must be doing something wrong because the learner's behaviors are only increasing in intensity and frequency. What is the most parsimonious way to approach this issue with the stakeholders? All right, long, wordy question. That's okay. We're going to take our time. We're going to understand what the question is asking. Importantly, it says we need to be parsimonious, meaning we need to pick the simplest explanation to approach this issue. What is the issue? Well, you're training a group of parents on extinction. So already you need to be considering side effects of extinction, what to expect from extinction. Because some families say, well, things are going well. Others say they must be doing something wrong because the learner's behaviors are only increasing in intensity and frequency. Now, as a behavior analyst, would that surprise you to learn that behaviors are increasing in intensity and frequency? Well, absolutely not. And why? Well, with extinction, we're likely to go through an extinction burst and see this increase in intensity and frequency. So how can you explain that to the stakeholders? A, conduct a new FBA and retrain the stakeholders on extinction. Now, remember, we also need to be parsimonious. A isn't the simplest explanation. A sounds like the most complicated explanation to me. There seems to be a much better, much simpler way to explain this to the stakeholders. B, explain to the stakeholders that the learner is experiencing spontaneous recovery, which is normal. Spontaneous recovery is normal, but this isn't spontaneous recovery because spontaneous recovery happens once the behavior is already extinct. We're still going through the extinction process. We're not going to experience spontaneous recovery yet. C, encourage the stakeholder to continue doing what they are doing as they are likely effectively implementing extinction. That's the most parsimonious explanation. Well, if you're doing it correctly, you're likely to see an extinction burst, and the behavior increasing in intensity and frequency is very likely part of that extinction burst. C looks good. Read all your answers. D, question the stakeholder on whether or not they may have unintentionally reinforced these behaviors. Well, you certainly don't want to start blaming the stakeholder when there's a much more parsimonious way to first deal with it. So the best answer here is C. Encourage the stakeholder to continue doing what they're doing as they're likely effectively implementing extinction. 66. One day you, a behavior analyst, are walking by your office manager's desk. She is not a behavior analyst. You notice the office manager is going through different photos of the clients and then posting her favorites on the business Instagram page. What should you do in this situation? All right, we have an ethical question here because it has to do with social media. So what should you do, a behavior analyst, in this case? Well, we know the office manager is not a behavior analyst. What does that tell you in ethics? In ethics, if we know somebody is not a behavior analyst, then we know they don't necessarily abide by our code. The people who follow the ethical code from the BACB are certified by the BACB. So since this office manager is not, she does not necessarily need to follow the code. However, because she works for the company and you follow the code, she will need to abide by those same rules. So is it necessarily bad that she's posting clients on the business page? Well, no, you can't post them on the personal page, right? But business pages, there are exceptions. If we have consent, informed consent, there's no problem. So what should you do knowing all of that? A, tell the office manager to stop posting pictures and that she is never allowed to post clients on social media. Well, not necessarily. If you have consent, there's nothing wrong with what she's doing. B, report the office manager to the BACB immediately for an ethical violation. Well, the office manager is not a BCBA, so the BACB can't do anything about it. And if she's an RBT, that's one thing, but she just seems to be an office manager. The BACB has no control over her. C, ask the office manager if she received informed consent from clients to post on the business account. Yes, that's what you have to do here. You are allowed to post photos of your clients on business pages with informed consent and with a disclaimer. So as long as she has that, she's okay. D, because we always read all of our answer choices, help pick out photos with her. There is nothing wrong with posting clients on your business page. The better answer, the more ethical answer is C. Ask the office manager if she received informed consent from clients to post on the business account. 67. Davey learned to tie his shoes today at school. His teacher walked him through each step one by one and had him repeat the steps out loud. Now, when Davey is trying to tie his shoes, he says to himself, hold laces, cross laces, bunny ears, tie and pull. What is Davey engaging in? What is Davey doing? We're looking at Davey's behavior. What is he doing here? Well, he's repeating to himself these steps that he learned from his teacher. But now he's telling himself this, right? So it seems to be some sort of self-management as he tries to get himself to walk through tying the shoes, because he's saying it to himself. So what is Davey engaging in? A, self-control. Self-control is better known as self-management for purposes of ABA and our interventions, right? Now, self-control is acknowledged, but we usually refer to it as self-management, and self-management is the overarching intervention here. Self-monitoring, self-evaluation, self-instruction, right, are all components of management. So is he self-monitoring? Well, no, he's not tracking himself, right? He's not taking data on himself. He's not watching himself. Is he self-evaluating? No, he's not evaluating or grading an assessment or evaluating his outcomes. All he's doing is self-instruction, right? He's talking himself through this behavior. He's instructing himself how to tie his shoes. So very simply, Davey's engaging in self-instruction. Self-management components are not overcomplicated, right? So don't make them overcomplicated, right? Self-management should be very, very intuitive and very straightforward, in my opinion. 68, Team Pop and Suds are competing against Team X-Blades for the Rollerblade Championship of 1998. Everyone on Team Pop and Suds must score at least a 90 for them to win. Peter is the last skater left, and Brink tells him he must nail the 540 to score a 90. What type of contingency does this scenario represent if winning is reinforcement? So be very careful here, right? What must happen to win, okay? To win, everyone on Team Pup and Suds must score at least a 90. Now, Brink tells Peter he must nail the 540 to score a 90. So for Peter to score a 90, he must nail the 540. But if Peter scores the 90 and nobody else on the team does, they still lose. So in order for the team to win, in order for everyone to receive reinforcement, everyone has to score a 90. So what type of contingency does it represent if winning is reinforcement? That's why you've got to read the questions very carefully. Because A, dependent group contingency, is very tricky and would be very easy to pick if you were rushing through. Because you might say, well, Peter scores the 90, everybody wins, they're dependent on Peter. Well, not necessarily. We don't know what anybody else scored. We just know he's the last skater left. So winning is reinforcement. To receive reinforcement, everyone must score at least a 90. So what we're looking at here is an interdependent group contingency. This is a tricky question, one you've got to read carefully, right? It's good practice. Slow down, read carefully. And then C, independent group contingency. Well, no, because everybody's reliant on everybody else. And obviously it's not rule governed behavior because it's the contingency set up, right? And they're going to hopefully meet the contingency, right? If they all score a 90. So if everybody scores a 90, it's going to be an interdependent group contingency, or it already is an interdependent group contingency, because if everybody scores a 90, they will win. Tricky question. 69. Lucy, by all accounts, is a healthy child. However, she does have a sweet tooth and likes to snack on gummy bears throughout the day. One day she feels pain in her teeth, so she goes to the dentist, who tells her she needs cavities. He tells her it has nothing to do with the gummy bears, actually, but it runs in her family. The cavities are related to what? Again, let's be careful. Looking at the cavities, what are they related to? What do we know about Lucy? Well, she's healthy, but she eats gummy bears. And now she has pain in her teeth, so she goes to the dentist. But the dentist says the cavities have nothing to do with the gummy bears. So her actions aren't the reason why she has cavities. It's her genetics. It's running in the family. So cavities are related to what? A, phylogeny. Yes, phylogeny is our genetics. It's what's passed down to us. It's things we can't control, right? It's our genetic makeup. And unfortunately for Lucy, cavities run in her family. Ontogeny is our learning history, right? This is our learning history, our actual operant behavior. Unfortunately for Lucy, phylogeny's got her genetics have got her, she can't fight it. See, cultural selection. Well, cultural selection is how we're raised and how things are passed down through actions and words. And obviously the cavities are not culturally selected, they're genetically selected. So the cavities are related to phylogeny. Again, a tricky question, right? One we have to read carefully and gather all the information first in order to get it correct. 70, which of the following interventions teaches a replacement behavior? All right, now this is how your test might go, right? You might get 3 or 4 very difficult ones in a row, and then that 5th one, maybe it's much more easy. You can't overthink the easy ones or say, well, this seems too easy. Don't overthink easy ones. View them as a gift, one you can answer quickly, easily, pick up an easy point, and move on. You got to trust your prep. So, which of the following interventions teaches a replacement behavior? A, differential reinforcement of other behavior. Well, we know DRO doesn't teach replacements, right? Because we're reinforcing in the absence of a behavior. So we're not teaching a replacement, we're just reinforcing for behavior not occurring. B, differential reinforcement of higher rates of behavior. Well, with B, we pick a target and we just want it to happen more. We're not necessarily replacing it. C, differential reinforcement of diminishing rates of behavior. That's almost the opposite of higher rates, right? We're picking a target, we want to see it decrease. So actually, none of these seem to teach a replacement. Other behaviors, we reinforce in the absence of a behavior. Differential reinforcement of higher rates, we pick a target and we reinforce when it increases. Differential reinforcement of diminishing, we pick a target and we reinforce when it decreases. None of these teach an actual replacement behavior.